Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. The Arkansas Razorbacks head coach, that's John Calipari. You know, most of the players on the Arkansas roster are players that Calipari either recruited to Kentucky or brought with him from Kentucky. And I think it's worth having a conversation about where Arkansas should be in the way too early top 25s. By the way, Cal did a sit down on Thursday with Dennis Dodd. I mean, I don't know when he did the sit down, but it published on Thursday. Found it a little interesting. I mean, I don't think there was anything in there that was earth-shattering stuff that, frankly, if you've been locked into this show, we have been talking about pretty much for the last 6 weeks since he took that job. But it's worth a read if you get a minute. But with that said, let's talk about where I think Arkansas should be in these way too early top 25s. Now, to be clear, I have Arkansas as we stand at number 12 right now. And I think Arkansas, in my opinion, kind of the other guys that do this for a living, this kind of falls, Arkansas falls more in line with my thinking than Kentucky does. But looking at the other top 25s, John Rothstein actually has Arkansas basically where I do at number 13. Gary Parrish has them at number 23. Jeff Borzello has them at number 25. Again, not disrespecting what those guys say. Those guys work their butts off. I respect all of their opinions. But like I said, I think they're a little bit more in line with where I stand on Arkansas, which is that this is already a really good team that I think has a chance to add another key piece or two going forward. Now, first of all, let me say this about Arkansas, okay? One, no matter what you think about John Calipari, and I know we got a lot of BBN in the chat, and I know we got a lot of BBN that's going to comment on this video as it goes up on YouTube. But at the same time, you could debate a lot of things. Listen, John Calipari, basically, you can argue whatever, but this is, by the way, this is part of why I have Arkansas in my top 15 right now. I have them at number 12. Why I'm at number 12 is because, how about this? Even in John Calipari's down years, the last couple seasons, he's basically had a team that's really a top 15 team by the end of the year. Now, there are ebbs and flows, peaks and valleys, especially when you go as young as he has this past year. But for all of the complaints about last year, for all of the disappointment, for all of the jokes that were made after the Oakland game, whatever, and again, since I know Kentucky fans are going to say it, yes, I was critical of Cal after the Oakland loss, okay? I'm not going to pretend that those tweets don't exist, that those comments don't exist. They're all still up on Twitter. They're all still up on the YouTube channel. I was very critical. But at the same time, what are we talking about with the Oakland loss? We're talking about a team that was a number 3 seed. So in a down year for Calipari, he had his team finish second in the toughest SEC that we have maybe ever seen, and they got a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament, which basically means by the end of the year, they were about a top 10 to 12 team. Now, again, you can argue the tournament failures have to factor in, but it doesn't factor in. You can whether you have success in the tournament or not is independent of were you good enough to compete for a national championship, and Kentucky absolutely was under Calipari this past year. By the way, 2022, the big St. Peter's loss that everybody said was the worst loss in the history of the program. I'm not going to argue it. I'm not going to argue that that was a disappointment. But guess what? They were a 2 seed in that tournament, which means they were somewhere between like the 5th and 8th best team in the country. So to me, don't sell me that, oh, Cal's terrible, Cal's this, Cal's that. No. By the end of the regular season, for the most part, he has his team in contention. Now, 2021, COVID year, that was a disaster. 2023, even 2023, injuries, guys in, out of the lineup. Your best player, Shaedon Sharp, leaves a year ahead of schedule before you're planning on having him leave. He still ended up as a 6 seed. That's like a top 20-ish type team. I digress. Arkansas is, in some of these polls, a top 25 team. But again, I think they're closer to 10 to 15 than they are 20 to 25. Why is that? Well, first of all, the talent is bananas, okay? I'm not going to go through every single player like I just did with Kentucky. But when you look at the roster, first of all, 3 of the most coveted portal players that were available. Don't take my word for it. Just take the word of everybody else who recruited them. John L. Davis. Everybody kind of sort of agreed that John L. Davis was probably the best player in the portal. I had him probably number 2 all offseason behind A.J. Storr, who committed to Kansas. It doesn't change the fact that John L. Davis was probably the best player in the portal. Jonas Aidoo. Where did he commit to Arkansas from? Tennessee. Played in the Elite Eight. By the way, who else was recruiting him? North Carolina. Baylor. If you're being recruited by Carolina out of the portal, if you're being recruited by Baylor out of the portal, you're a pretty good basketball player. And of course, earlier this week, Adu Thiero, much the same. He was a guy that was could have gone back to Kentucky, probably. I'm still a little unsure of how aggressively Mark Pope recruited him. I think Mark Pope was just trying to clean house, whatever. But Carolina wanted him. Hubert Davis flew to Lexington to meet with him. So don't tell me those 3 weren't coveted. Big Z was obviously coveted. And then, oh, by the way, only 3 high school players. And beyond that, 3 very coveted high school players. Carter Knox could have gone pretty much anywhere in the country. McDonald's All-American, top 20 player. Boogie Fland, top 20 player, could have gone anywhere in the country. And of course, Billy Richmond, a guy that had offers from Memphis and a bunch of really talented places. Those are all really good players. And so I see what everybody else sees, and I see why people have them in the top 25. Really, the only knock you could have against them is, well, they only have 7 players right now. It's like, yeah, they only have 7 players. But if you listen to Coach Cal, that's kind of by design. Like I mentioned the Dennis Dodd article earlier. I don't think it was anything earth-shattering. That's not to criticize Dennis Dodd. It's just to say it was kind of a surface level piece. All the stuff that we've talked about, all the stuff that I've told you happened behind the scenes, the story basically confirmed. But at the same time, one thing Cal did say is, listen, last year, one of our faults was we had too many talented players. He mentioned Reed Sheppard. He said, Reed Sheppard said that he thought, he being Reed Sheppard, he was basically going to be a towel boy, 10th, 11th guy, and was going to spend 4 years at Kentucky. Nobody thought he was going to be a lottery pick. And so I think part of Kentucky's downfall last year was by the end of the season, they had too many guys. Part of it's on Cal. Never settled on a rotation, played too many guys, whatever. But also, part of it was they were still really, really, really good. And so when people want to criticize Cal that they only have 7 guys, I think that's by design. Cal, in his best years, has really stuck with a 7-8-man rotation and not backed off from it. And so you have the 7. DJ Wagner is visiting this weekend. I believe he's going to be number 8 probably by Monday or Tuesday. But then from there, I don't really see Arkansas adding very many more pieces. Maybe another shooter. Maybe another big guy. But I think that's it, right? Isn't that part of being a coach? Isn't that part of evaluating and getting better, is figuring out what works and what didn't? And so if your argument against Arkansas being in the top 25 or being in the top 20 or being in the top 15 is they only have 7 players, I don't really think they're adding much more, just like what I said with Kentucky a minute ago. But also, let me ask you this. How many people's top 7s right now are better than Arkansas? Because it ain't very many, okay? There's a few. I mean, listen, I'm not going to lie. Kansas has a really good top 7. Just kicked out Riley Kugel. They didn't kick him out. That's the wrong way to put it. But Riley Kugel's gone. But other than that, Kansas has a really good top 7. UConn's got a really good top 7. I'll be honest. I'm a UConn guy. I don't know that on paper, UConn's top 7 is better than Arkansas's top 7. Now, Dan Hurley's been killing it the last few years. So that's not really a criticism of Dan Hurley, but I don't think on paper it's the top 7 is better. Could they be better next season because Dan Hurley is an elite, the best coach in college basketball? Sure. Alabama, maybe they have a better top 7. Maybe they don't. We'll see what Mark Sears and Jaron Stevenson do. But there's not many. Maybe Baylor. Probably not. Maybe Iowa State. Probably. Like, there aren't that many better top 7s. And so I just bring it up to say that the top 25 stuff is very interesting to me. As I said, rosters are mostly set. And it sets up for a fascinating couple weeks. But, I think Kentucky is largely underrated. I think Arkansas is underrated as well.